The order of minigames in Rhythm Heaven DS teaches players how to use the stylus. As opposed to pressing Start or A, this game requires players to perform a flick before the game will even begin. The simple text boxes are clear and unobtrusive, and they never take control away from the player. If the flick is unsuccessful, a one-word text box communicates how to fix the failure. After a brief tutorial on basic timing, the first game, built to scale, serves as a test for the flick function. Some might think right now, well, that's obvious, teach players how to play the game at the beginning. But there's a completely alternative way that Rhythm Heaven could have happened. This game could have been nothing but tapping, because its prequel on the Game Boy Advance was limited to buttons by the console. Instead, Rhythm Heaven makes a dedicated point to innovate with the touchscreen. Having the first game dedicate to flicking as opposed to tapping makes that point clear. Glee Club, content with the player's ability to flick, teaches a new concept, holding the stylus down. Players have to hold the stylus down before flicking in Built to Scale, but they likely weren't thinking about that since they were only graded on flicking. This game teaches control cleverly by emphasizing negative space. Here, the player must hold the stylus on the screen in order to not burst into song. The timing comes from putting the stylus off of the screen before putting it back on. Additionally, the Together Now move requires that prominent flick so that the initial skill is kept strong in muscle memory.
Together now.
Its cue is also much shorter than the one in Built to Scale, marking an increase in challenge. Philbots is very similar to Glee Club, but the function is inverted. Now the stylus is off the screen by default, and the test comes from touching the screen and taking it off with good timing. It's normal now. Now that players understand holding the stylus down, they can perform the timed hold with complete understanding and control. Fan Club, the final game in Set 1, is the first minigame to feature tapping the screen like a button. Only when players completely understand the stylus and flicking can they go back to the simple prompts of Rhythm Tengoku. During the introduction of tapping, flicking is still heavily integrated into gameplay. Players have to tap the screen and are graded on that timing, hold the stylus down, and flick, whose timing is also graded. I suppose gives a long pause between clapping and jumping, so players have a lot of time for their brains to figure out what's going on.
I suppose. Yeah.
Remixes are cool, but they're not relevant to teaching players why touching is good. Remix 1 is fun and exemplary of what Rhythm Heaven was truly made for. It's a boss fight and a climax to mark segmented progress. Remix 1 introduces players to faster tempo after 4 consecutive slow games, and that's good. Rhythm Rally can be considered a jazzed up version of Built to Scale because players are only graded on flick timing once again, but this time the rhythm is much faster. The timing cue in Built to Scale is 1, 2, 3, 4, flick, accentuated by Do, Re, Mi, Fa, So, while in Rhythm Rally the cue is 1 bounce on the table. There are even fast and slow rallies to mix things up and keep players attentive. The Rhythm Heaven community seems to find Rhythm Rally and its sequel extremely difficult for these reasons. The music is zany and fast-paced, and the preemptive tension of whether the rally will be normal speed or slow keeps the difficulty high. Shoot 'em Up and Bluebirds seem to simply serve to sharpen tapping skills and speed. Peck Your Beak in particular is easy to mess up due to its fast consecutive tempo. Bluebirds ups the ante of timed touches followed by timed flicks. Fan Club gave a long pause between clapping and jumping, but in Bluebirds that pause is much shorter. Later games will create a variety of times between touching and flicking, but here the consistency of timing builds a foundation of technique. Rhythm Rally is to Built to Scale as Moidowop is to Philbots. Where Rhythm Rally served as a mastery test for flicking, Moidowop intensely examines player ability to control how long they hold the stylus on screen. This minigame, like Rhythm Rally, requires a variety of timing length, but here the length of one song is completely determined by Simon over here, as opposed to only having 3 different sets. Again, players find this one and its sequel insanely difficult. I can do it though. After the first 2 sets, players are trusted to understand how the stylus works, so they can now go crazy combining touches, flicks, and the like to have fun. Love Lizards, Rockers, and Love Lab are particularly strong uses of the touchscreen and charm me to no end. I don't care about any of this, by the way. I pulled this all out of my ass. I'm trying to sound smart so that I can gain your approval. This essay has no dick. There's no emotion here. I need to talk about this. How does Rhythm Heaven make me feel? Rhythm Heaven makes me feel good. Its audio-visual stimulation is fun. Its interactive elements are simple as can be. It's simple, pure fun. The stimulation is immediate. Every action in this game, barring menus, is invigorating to succeed and silly to fail. Not even demoralizing to fail. Just funny. You boot up the game, you get a little title screen before each minigame, you ride the roller coaster, you achieve fun, and then you're done. The black rating screen following up that audiovisual feast effectively calms the senses before players choose another ride, and that's clever. Rhythm Heaven has no bullshit. Rhythm Heaven is 50 different minute-long roller coasters with no lines in between. That's great because when I tried to increase the size of my rhythm games for babies on the Nintendo DS repertoire, I found games with very long lines between the rides. Rhythm Thief and the Emperor's Treasure features a story in which cardboard cutouts of anime characters attempt to talk to each other in bold Times New Roman font, and sometimes there's a rhythm game. That's okay in its own right, but when I buy a game with rhythm in the name, I'd like to play the game. Harmonite also has the gall to include a story too. Can you believe it? Sometimes in Harmonite, cardboard cutouts of stylized anime characters exposit a basic adventure story. What a crime! For the crime of making a game that Steeb doesn't like, I sentence you to 30 years in prison, or at least until the next Pokemon game comes out, because I'll eat that shit up. You know what the biggest crime of all is? Rhythm Heaven Megamix decided to add a story too, in its system of segmented minigames. The fact that the story is here at all is the opposite of my preferences. The fact that cutscenes are unskippable is a death sentence on its own. The fact that players have to press A once to skip the text crawl and A again, followed by letting go of A to advance lines of text, is abysmal. Rhythm Heaven's core aesthetics are challenge and sensation. Not only does Megamix's story fail to tickle the narrative, challenge, or sensation aesthetic in any conceivable manner, its story does not complement the game in any way, shape, or form. I assume that the lighthearted tone of the story is intended to complement the tone of the game proper, but the translation/writing is so unstimulating, so nothing, that it fails to strike the senses in any way which the game proper does. Yeah, so I appreciate a certain lack of bullshit. Old Rhythm Heaven games only required players to mash through 3 or 4 menus to get to the meat. That sounds like a lot, but they fly by quickly, so the time between boot up and gameplay is much shorter than other games can be. Tengoku, you can do it in fucking seconds, dude. Let's compare this to... a resident Citizen Kane of gaming, Super Mario Bros. For the NES. In that game, players must press start once. Oh. There's a really cool formula to these minigames. Most games play out with a simple introduction, often with long pauses to accommodate players to the flow, followed by a steady increase in challenge, sometimes in which the secondary mechanic is introduced, followed by a climax in which these mechanics are combined or remixed in tricky ways to test player ability, and ending on a repeat of the introduction or something similarly simple to cap things off. This resembles the chart of tension throughout a movie. Notable is the humble beginning, a steady increase in tension, a climax, followed by a cooldown period. But Rhythm Heaven minigames are only 1 minute long, so it only gets one peak. The consecutive small peaks do, in fact, ascend into an overarching climax like the movie does. That is a thing that they do. These minigames represent a simplified version of narrative flow. Rhythm Heaven has a strong, buttery smooth sense of flow in this way. That's cool. I think it's cool that pressing a single button can feel so many different ways. In Rhythm Heaven alone, pressing the A button can feel hard, it can feel soft, it can feel smooth, it can feel quick, it can feel slow, it can feel like a tap dancer in Tap Troop, you feel like a power puncher in Karate Man. I don't know how to describe what flexing in Ringside feels like. Compare the swimming in Micro Row to the slapping in Packing Pests. Compare pressing A in Flock Step, where you get this like weird suction sound, to Karate Man, where you're punching rice bowls and you feel incredibly powerful. It's a hard thing. Compare that to the swimming feeling of Micro Row, where it's very smooth, but it's still snappy. Following the innovation of the touchscreen of Rhythm Heaven DS, Rhythm Heaven Fever has the player press A and B at the same time in the games, and sometimes they hold them down and then let go. And that feels powerful. That's kinesthetic. It takes more effort, it takes more focus to hold down the button. So when you hold down that button and the character on screen fucking goes apeshit on something and does something amazing, that's exactly how that should feel. And it's good, and I like it. I think I missed the point again. I think I need to say why Rhythm Heaven is so stimulating. It's pretty colors and catchy music, Steven. It's not hard to understand. The act of pressing a button in these games creates such juicy audio and visual effects that dopamine courses through my veins. The game's strict timing creates that challenge aesthetic, and dopamine courses through my veins when my brain realizes that I just passed a test. The variety in minigames mitigates the resistance to dopamine rush caused by overdose. I play one game, I feel good in the particular way that Karate Man stimulates, and then I play a completely different audiovisual feast and become stimulated in the way that Monkey Watch stimulates. Tap Troop stimulates, Bossa Nova stimulates, Hole-in-One stimulates, but they all do it in a different way, yet it's all under the same formula. This game has amazing presentation and style. Rhythm Heaven is unabashedly silly. It's happy, it's fun, and everything about it contributes to that feeling of fun. It's an attention to detail. It's a rigid, rock-solid system in which anything and everything that takes place happens in the name of fun. I love the tension in Exhibition Match, where 4 entire beats pass between the pitch and the swing. On an interactive level, the long pause increases the tension between the player and the game, and narratively, a long pause increases the tension before Mr. Big Batting Hero's moment of truth. That swing is immensely satisfying, and the level of satisfaction which the batter gets when he nails that 10th home run in a row is stimulating. Combine that with the feeling of accomplishment of overcoming the challenge, tricky audio cues, etc., and dopamine courses through my veins. The song in Karate Man Fever is dramatic and intense. I am not invested in the dramatic backstory of Karate Man. I am invested in the enthusiasm with which the game presents Karate Man. Combined with the difficulty and intensity of the interactivity of the game, and dopamine courses through my veins. Karate Man Combo is silly, but it resembles something which might in another title be taken seriously. Maybe Rhythm Heaven combines seriousness and silliness to create a heightened level of player investment. The seriousness of timing and performance with the silliness of what's happening on screen. Flockstep works this way. Pressing the A button at a constant pace with tight timing requires deep focus. That player focus is being directed at this. Players realize that they are exerting significant effort into something which looks and sounds ridiculous, and that's funny. And then the game does this. And that's amazing! It's so fun. It's fun, and it's great, and I like it. One of the most memorable and meme-tic minigames in Rhythm Heaven Fever is Ringside, in which a muscle-bound wrestler character flexes and nods to the press. That's silly. That's ridiculous. But it's so inviting in a way. And some of his poses are borderline erotic, and that's hilarious. I did that. As the player, I made the sweaty, grimy fighter strike a pose for the camera, and the crowd is eating it up. Then the remixes recolor and recontextualize the previously established minigames, and it's the best thing ever. This is the logical conclusion to the Rhythm Heaven formula. It feels perfect. It's almost overstimulating how much ass Fever's Remix 8 and 9 kick. There's so much spirit jammed into each phrase of these games that dopamine courses through my veins. Rhythm Heaven makes me feel.